Hola chicos, ¿cómo estás? Welcome to Miss Harmony's Spanish, the podcast designed to help absolute beginners, just like you, learn Spanish. I'm your host Harmony, and I am thrilled to be on this language learning journey with you. In this episode, we're going to look at the absolute basics of Spanish, looking at basic greetings and basic pronunciation. So if you're ready, I'm ready, and let's get started. Now, learning Spanish is huge. It's an adventure. It's an absolute massive journey. Like, you are literally unlearning the rules of your native language to learn a set of rules for your second language and then putting them into practice instantaneously, like you would do with your native language. But it's an exciting time and it's an exciting experience to be able to speak another language. Put it into this perspective. If you speak a little bit of Spanish, you can then communicate with 21 other countries of the world. Isn't that amazing? So whether you're using it to travel, to communicate with Spanish-speaking friends or family, or just simply expanding your knowledge and testing yourself, it's a really incredibly valuable language to learn. And they say it's actually one of the easy ones to learn if you're a native English speaker. And the reason for that is because it's a very similar sentence structure. So Spanish is always a good option. Okay, so I should mention that I don't speak Latin American Spanish. Although I've been speaking Spanish for around 15 years, and sometimes I actually think it's better than my English, I'm used to speaking traditional Castilian Spanish from Spain. So what that means is my C's and my Z's in Espanol are like th sounds, like theatre. Take the island Ibiza, for example, near Spain. Okay, that's pronounced Ibiza, even though it's got a Z in it. There are a few other differences between Spain Spanish and Latin American Spanish, but that's probably the biggest difference. So, like, for example, if you were to say the word thank you in Espanol, people in Spain are more likely to say gracias with a th compared to gracias, which is more used in Latin America. And that's not to say people in Spain won't say gracias, because some of them will. And it depends on the area and the regional dialect, but traditional Castilian Spanish will say gracias. So depending on who you're listening to or where you're from or who you're talking to is from, will depend on how they pronounce certain words. The best thing to probably compare it to in English is comparing British English and American English. Neither are wrong. Both can understand each other, but you can sort of tell what part of the world whichever one's from by the way they pronounce things. I mean, the accent gives it away too, but it's a sort of same thing with Spanish. And obviously in Latin America, each country has their own dialect too, so it's not just Latin America v Spain, it's just Latin American countries tend to have more in common, even though they are vastly different sometimes. So the takeaway of everything I've just waffled on about is that it doesn't matter. Whether you pronounce it like me or completely the opposite to me, it's all Spanish and it's all right. I'm just pointing out that you might hear me say it one way and you may hear somebody else say it another, and there's nothing wrong with either pronunciation. My tip to you, however, is I would choose whichever one you want to stick with, gracias or gracias, and use it all the way through your Spanish learning. Otherwise it becomes jumbled. A bit like if you spoke in half British English, half American English. But ultimately, it's up to you. So far we've learnt that I would pronounce things with C's and Z's as ths. And if you pronounce it slightly differently, it's still fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, before we move on and delve a little bit deeper, let's focus on the fundamental aspects of any language, the greetings. Los saludos, as they would say. Greetings are not only a really polite way of communicating, but are also a wonderful conversation starter with native speakers or even anybody who speaks it as a second language, a third language, just anybody who does speak Spanish. Okay, so let's start with the most basic of the basic and the most universal, the word for hello. Now, you probably already know this, it's probably already in your vocabulary, but we're going to go through it anyway. So hello in Espanol es hola. Now in Spanish, if a word begins with H, pretend it's not there. So it's not hola, it's hola. Okay, so your turn, hola. Muy bien, chicos. Now, if you want to get a bit cheeky with it, you say hola with a smile. It all goes on how you pronounce things. There's a difference between saying hola and hola. It's the same in English. So context and how you pronounce things is really important in language. However, if you want to be a bit more respectful or a bit more formal, you can use buenos dias, which technically means good day, but they would use it as good morning. And it's pronounced buenos dias. Okay, so it's your turn now. Okay, so buenos dias. Muy bien, chicos. Okay, so you've learnt how to say good morning. But what if it's not the morning? What do you say instead of that? Well, you can say good afternoon. Same in English. But in Spanish, it changes ever so slightly. So to say good afternoon in Español becomes buenas tardes. And it's pronounced buenas tardes. Which literally means good afternoon. Okay, so it's your turn, chicos. Buenas tardes. Fantástico, chicos. Okay, so let me just point out something very unusual, yet fascinating about Spanish culture. So, depending on whether you've had your lunch, can determine whether you say buenos dias or buenas tardes. So it could be 1:30 in the afternoon, and if you've not had your midday meal, lunch or dinner if you're from the north, then you could still say buenos dias, as it's an indication of whether you've had something to eat. And if you've had something to eat, it's buenas tardes. The other thing I should point out about the times of the day is that they call the afternoon up until when it's really dark outside. So it could be 11 o'clock at night and you would still be saying buenas tardes. So we've had buenos dias for before lunch or the morning, and buenas tardes for the afternoon or after lunch. So what do you call the evening? Well, that depends on the time, or should I say, depends on whether it's light outside. So like I just mentioned, if it's not dark outside, it's still buenas tardes. So when nightfall does fall, what do you say then? They say buenas noches, which literally means good night. Buenas noches. Easy peasy. Okay, so how about you have a go? So it's pronounced buenas noches. Okay, so your turn, guys. Buenas noches. Muy bien, chicos. So we've had buenos dias for morning or pre-lunch, buenas tardes for post-lunch or the afternoon, and buenas noches for good evening or good night. That's 3 new greetings you've learnt today, and you can put them together with hola. So you could say hola buenos dias, or hola buenas tardes, or hola buenas noches. Seems easy enough, right? The next thing I want to point out about these greetings, buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches, is something that's quite close to my heart, is being lazy, especially with speaking. In English, we tend to abbreviate a lot of words. We go from do not to don't and cannot to can't. And the Spanish do the same with some words. So buenos dias gets shortened to just buenos. Hola, buenos. And they know exactly what you're talking about. Same with buenas tardes and buenas noches. They get shortened to buenas. And it's a good trick for those who aren't a native Spanish speaker and don't know about time etiquette, about when the afternoon finishes and noche starts, to just say buenas, because you don't have to specify. So you could say hola, buenos dias, hola, buenos, hola, buenas tardes, hola, buenas, y hola, buenas noches, or hola, buenas. It can't get any easier than that. Well, that wraps up our first episode of Miss Harmony's Spanish. We've laid the foundation of introducing you to some essential greetings and to some basic phrases. And they're always going to come in handy, so it's great to practice. And remember, practice is key to any sort of learning, not just language. So keep repeating these greetings and use them on other people and build your confidence for speaking them. In the next episode, we're going to deep dive into some more basic phrases and everyday conversations. Until then, hasta luego. I'll see you next time. Gracias for tuning in. And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave us a comment if you want. For more updates and tips, anything related to language learning, remember to follow us on our social medias. Until then, guys, adios!